I guess we should get into our first review.
Indeed.
That would be The Imaginary.
The Imaginary, not to be confused with If, and definitely, despite the best efforts of search engines, to confuse it with the 2024 horror movie Imaginary. This is The Imaginary. It's distinct.
Yes. Yeah, it's this is an anime film in the vein of Miyazaki, but not made by Miyazaki or by Studio Ghibli, for that matter.
Yeah, which I was actually shocked about, because you can definitely see the influence in the character designs, but it looked like they were okay. So the mean way you could put it is that it's knockoff Studio Ghibli. But what it really is it's made by a studio called Studio Panak, which is which was founded by a group of former Ghibli animators who went off to do their own thing.
Yeah, so basically the Japanese equivalent of Don Bluth.
Yep. Yeah, although that does seem to happen pretty frequently over there.
Yeah.
I guess it's because they have I don't know if I'd call it healthy given the work conditions, but they have a dynamic animation industries. I think that's a fair word for it.
Yeah. Well, Anno, the creator of Evangelion, I think he started at Ghibli, if I'm not mistaken.
Almost certainly. Then he got into Gainax, and then I don't know if what he does today is still Gainax, but we're very off topic. So
yeah, we are.
So Daniel, I'll give him the quick rundown.
Yeah, so The Imaginary takes place in Great Britain, and it follows a girl named Lizzie, Amanda. Sorry, Lizzie is Amanda's mother. Amanda, who's this? How old would you say she was? About 9, 10?
I think they said 9.
9. Okay. And Amanda has an imaginary friend named Rudger, not Roger, Rudger. She makes a point of making that distinction many times in the film.
Rudger. There are no O's in Rudger.
Yes.
If you get that reference, you probably all the same political podcasts I do.
Yes. So she basically, she and Roger kind of go on these, imaginary adventures that she creates in her head. And most of that, I won't spoil that part of it, but then one day, a very creepy looking guy who likes to sniff people shows up.
I think the funniest thing in that opening introductory scene is that the mother is shockingly unconcerned. Like, while she wants him to leave, she is unconcerned that he is closing his eyes and sniffing in the direction of her daughter.
Yeah. Yes. And of course, Amanda, she can see that with the guy whose name is Mr. Bunting, he has a girl with her. That's him right down there. And the girl, the little creepy Wednesday Addams looking girl, that's his imaginary friend. Did we ever get her name?
Did we ever get her name?
I can't remember.
That would actually, in my opinion, be kind of appropriate that she didn't have a name, considering the way he seems to view imaginary friends.
Yes. Yeah. So Bunting has this weird thing where not only can he see other people's imaginary friends, but he swallows them. Like
he eats them to sustain his own life.
Right. Yeah. He's like I think he's like 100 or 200 years old or something like that.
Yeah. He's been at this for a while.
Yeah.
Which makes this kind of goofy outfit of, like, he always walks around in a Hawaiian shirt, just and shorts, just kind of amusing. Like it's in keeping with the movie's aesthetic to have the creepy villain be kind of goofy at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. And so what ends up happening is uh, Mr. Bunting is trying to eat Roger, and Amanda tries to stop him. Tries to stop him, and then when they're in the parking lot at the grocery store, they run away from him, and then Amanda gets hit by a car.
And I think this was at like what, the half hour mark or so.
Yeah, about around there. Yeah.
And in retro, it's kind of I'll give it this. So this is kind of similar to other media I've seen about what happens to imaginary friends, like Foster Home for Imaginary Friends, If, which we reviewed earlier this year. You don't often see them where the imaginary friend is the point of view character.
Right. Yeah. And that's what we got here. Because after Amanda gets hit by the car, Roger starts disappearing, and the gold pixie dust that you see in the image there, that's what starts to happen to him. And then that's when he comes across a very strange looking cat, the one that's right there next to him with one red eye and one blue eye. And then he tells Roger, hey, there's there's a place where you can go, but if you don't go there soon, you're going to disappear.
Right.
Yeah.
So there ends up being a imaginary friend sanctuary at the local library because human imagination is basically the oxygen they breathe. And so being in a library where people are having their minds sparked all the time helps sustain them.
Yes. And what I thought the clever thing that they did was having these imaginary friends from like William Shakespeare and Beethoven, and I can't remember who else was in there. But yeah, so now, but Roger, he doesn't want to stay at the library. He wants to go back to Amanda.
Right, because everybody is convinced that she's dead, where he's convinced that she's alive somewhere. She needs him.
Right, and of course the kind of the de facto leader of the imaginary friends is Emily, who's she's the only other human looking imaginary there, and that's her off to the right.
Yeah, well, it's not zooming in on the right spot for me, so
yeah.
So yeah, that's the basic conflict is Roger is trying to get back to Amanda while she's actually first find out if Amanda is still alive, and second, if she is, get back to her.
Right.
Even as everybody else is trying to convince him, just forget about it.
Yeah, and then we also kind of find out that Mr. Bunting is kind of like Voldemort to these imaginaries. Like oh no, they don't talk about him.
Right. Even though they're also kind of convinced that he isn't real, but they also know a lot of accurate details about him.
Yeah.
Which, okay, so any sort of fantastical universe like this, you're probably going to have a couple of things that are a little inconsistent, especially in children's media where they don't design it for grognards, basically.
Yeah.
What I would say is that I would wonder how they had so many details about him right when they think he is fictional. But there is an element later in the movie that might actually explain that and all that I just tied together right now. But I'll get to that in kind of the spoilery section.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this from a strengths and weaknesses perspective. I would say that overall this has an imaginative and nice animation style.
Yes.
They have a good variety of imaginary friends. The kind of reminded me of If, in that you could tell where they're maybe starting to run out of steam trying to pad out a whole retirement home full of imaginary friends. Similar kind of thing here where some of them weren't as inspired as others.
Yeah.
While I said there are some inconsistencies in the lore, they did come up. They were pretty good at sticking to their rules. Like imaginary friends can't go through walls unless their person imagines them being able to do so. So the characters can actually get stuck in a closed door because they can't interact with the real world, but they still have to obey the restrictions of, can't like, oh no, I'm stuck in the basement. I hope there's an open window somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And uh, I will say it's like some of the characters are, like are charming in their own way. Like, I mean, Roger's a decent character. Um, and he's kind of like usually with like imaginary friends, like or characters that people they make, somebody makes up. They're like an extension of that person's of their creators' personalities, basically.
Mhm.
Either they are them, or they're people that they wish they could be. And with Roger, it seems more like he's just kind of like the either the best friend or the brother that Amanda never had.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like, it basically it's so Amanda's the child of a single mother. Well, actually, no, the child of a widow. Her father is. I don't think they ever actually said the words that her father was dead. I thought, like, so there's like a 5% chance in my mind that they might just be divorced and he's far away. But
Yeah,
uh,
they
I,
kind of insinuated that he died.
yeah, yeah. So basically, she's lonely. Her mom's lonely. Her mom's working hard trying to keep their bookstore alive, though she has ultimately failed because at the start of the movie, she's looking for new work while they're wrapping down or winding down the bookstore.
Yeah,
And so Roger is basically just a solid, dependable person who loves Amanda.
yeah, yeah. Um, I will. I think the part of the weaknesses I think with the movie is that it's just I was getting frustrated with it. I'll be honest. It seemed like it was one of those movies where it was just like where the character is trying to do something, and
Mhm.
it's just they can't, like, for whatever reason they just they can't, they're kept from doing it, and it's just after a while that gets grating with me, at least with me personally. That gets really frustrating after a while.
Okay, so like you were seeing the objective of okay, the objective is he wants to get to Amanda, but it's not even like he was making constant progress towards getting back to Amanda. It's just he kept getting sidetracked.
Right, yeah,
Yeah, I could definitely understand that.
yeah,
I didn't I wouldn't have used the word frustrated, but I was losing my interest a bit in the middle.
yeah,
Um, Now, as far as and also, I'd say Amanda herself is kind of a brat. In
yeah,
fact, remove the kind of. Amanda is a brat.
yeah, she is,
Like
yeah,
she is a terror to her mother, doesn't do anything she's told, very self-centered, which is why I was surprised that she was old enough to go to school once I actually got a good beat on her personality.
yeah.
Because like I would have believed anywhere from like 4 to 6.
Yeah,
Um, so I was actually I feel bad for saying this, but it was almost kind of a relief when she got hit by that car because she isn't all that compelling of a character.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, and she's like largely absent for the movie. Yeah,
Yep. So they gave her the proper amount of development. You can see why Roger is loyal to her, and also why and I would say some of the better scenes in the movie are her mom dealing with this emotional impact.
yeah.
Um, Now, as far as let's see, other non-spoiler thoughts. What did you watch this in? Did you watch this in English or Japanese?
I watched it in English, and Yeah, everybody had a British accent.
Yeah, and so I watched like the first 15 minutes in English, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And switched over to Japanese. I don't know what it is because you recall I did the same thing for Blue Eye Samurai.
Yeah,
There is something about Netflix's stable of English voice actors for anime that just drives me up the wall every time, and I don't know what it is because it's not like I'm a subtitles only guy for shows on Crunchyroll or High Dive or whatnot. Like I'll happily
yeah,
watch whatever seems most convenient. Like basically, I often watch shows with others, so I tend to just go with whatever seems the most convenient.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I noticed that too with there was a series called Hero Mask that I watched. I think I watched the first season of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched it in Japanese first. And it was like this. It took place in Britain, and I
Mm-hmm.
watched it in Japanese first, and I thought it was pretty good. And then I tried watching the English version, and it was god awful. Like the voice actors were flat. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I'm sure there are fine actors if you catch them in person. Just voice acting is a very different talent.
Yeah. So, well, okay. So I looked up. I'm looking at the Wikipedia for the movie. Haley Atwell voiced Lizzie, Amanda's mother,
Mm-hmm.
in the English version. She's Peggy Carter in
Oh,
the
okay.
MCU. Um, and LeVar Burton voiced one of the characters.
Was he the cat?
No, he was the dog,
Oh, okay. Yeah, the old dog
the
who
old
was
dog.
the mother's imaginary friend who you
Yeah.
meet.
Yes.
Now, us look at this from the. So I say, like, let's say it's an okay enough time. I could see small children getting kind of bored in the middle because there isn't as much whimsy as I was expecting from the first half,
Yeah, and
or I should say, from the opening scene.
yeah, and uh, it's also dark in a few places, and it might get them a little riled up.
Yeah, like I identified several spots in the movie where you would probably be dealing with a crying child.
Yes, yeah,
Because they managed to hit you like they managed to set things up like when Amanda gets hit they set it up perfectly like you don't actually see it happen but it happened and like it's full of tension and gut wrenching.
yeah,
um
yeah.
the character over there, what's the leader of the imaginary friends,
Emily.
Emily. Spoiler alert, Emily gets shot with some sort of finger beam by Mr. Bunting. And
Yeah,
then all of the other imaginary friends, except for Roger, have forgotten her completely.
yeah,
And that's what just hit me a bit ago is that, okay, what if the reason that they think that Mr. Bunting is a myth is that one of the friends from the past who had told them about Mr. Bunting um, got eaten by him. Like they were he was chasing them down. He managed to they stayed way ahead of him for a bit. He eventually got them. What if everybody else just forgot where they heard this story, so they assumed it was just a story?
uh, okay,
I
yeah,
don't know if that's the authorial intent, but that actually ties together decently enough for me.
yeah, yeah,
But and I'd say the ending is maybe a maybe I missed a detail, but it seemed like Roger was falling apart anyway, even though he was reunited with Amanda. Um,
yeah.
but like, why? Like, she's still being imaginative, and everything seems to be okay.
Well, she had been in a coma for
Like,
you know for a couple of
yeah,
days.
I guess, but okay. There's another element in this movie that I thought was really funny, but okay, it's funny from like a meta perspective, but I could also see parents being disturbed by it, and I could see children being confused by it.
I think I know
I,
what you're talking about. Yeah,
so one of the elements they have here is that similar to other things about abandoned imaginary friends, you can end up getting adopted by a new child. Like one of the minor characters ends up having that happen to him in the middle of the movie. We kind of glossed over the part where like every night they get assignments to go help these kids, and that's where those Polaroid pictures are.
Right. Yeah. And they basically be their imaginary friends for a brief period of time. They like
Mm-hmm.
with them uh so like Roger and Emily and the others, they were
It's like a space adventure, yeah.
space adventure. Yeah, they were playing with this kid doing a space adventure. Yeah.
And then he decided he really liked one of them, and the little skeleton guy transmogrifies into a panda, which is what he really wanted as his imaginary friend. So like just whatever you were before gets overwritten.
Yeah.
And Roger ends up with one of Amanda's classmates who's super into ballet, who turns him into a girl, a ballerina. Okay, so I could see parents being like, okay, parents being, if they're dealing with a small child who they think won't cry when they see multiple people die, they might not want to have conversations about that, because Roger gets the full whammy for a bit. Like he starts like, if you're listening to it in Japanese, he starts using female pronouns. The voice actress in Japanese switches from doing a little boy voice to doing a little girl voice. He's brainwashed for a bit before he gets knocked out of it. So that's like, there's a lot of what I would call like mind warping in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is a it's just a thing to be aware of. Now, where I think it's funny from a meta perspective is that it's former Studio Ghibli people, and once Emily dies, they were suspiciously close to having a Ghibli-esque film with a male protagonist. So I guess they had to fix that for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, when you consider that almost all the other ones, like even like Princess Mononoke, is really more the point of view character of I can't remember his name 20 years after watching it, but the young adventurer, the style character is still the woman raised by wolves, Princess Mononoke. But
yeah.
So it just struck that's what just struck me as really funny was you couldn't handle it. You couldn't handle having no young girl character on this screen, could you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I wanted to like this one a lot more than I did, especially because I felt like it had a nice, strong opening.
Yeah.
If I look at it from the perspective of a parent considering showing this to the kids, I think I actually wouldn't, just because, again, multiple scenes we're gonna have a crying child, awkward questions in the transformations sequence, and then a little bit on the meandery side, like the part that you were frustrated about, where it didn't seem to have a strong through line.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? Yeah. Also, Mr. Bunting and his assistant are just scary in places, like horror movie scary.
Yeah. He bothered me a lot. Yeah.
He definitely comes off as like a P-file.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe that was the intention.
Yeah. So and that's why I felt a little comfortable spoiling things. Like I don't think that a lot of adults would get much out of it, aside from some nice animation.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's decent enough, I think. It's not nothing. It's not like you said, it's not Princess Mononoke. It's not like it's not gonna wow anybody.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It makes me kind of curious to watch their previous movie, Mary and the Princess or the Witch's Flower, just to see if, Because like I looked up reviews for the novel this was based on, which wasn't Japanese. I believe it was an English novel, and it seemed like it had kind of middling reviews there too, which makes you wonder what spoke to the studio to adapt it.
Yeah, I don't know.
So maybe just a lack of source material.
Probably, yeah.